the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO organization, which was formed in 1949 as a collective defense agreement among Western nations. The United States, Canada, and several Western European nations came together to create this alliance. The formation of NATO was a response to the growing influence of the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe after World War II. The United States and its Western allies were concerned about the spread of communism and sought ways to prevent further expansion of communist influence on the European continent. There are some key events leading to the formation of NATO. In 1947, the U.S. introduced the Marshall Plan, a diplomatic initiative that provided aid to friendly nations to help them rebuild their war-damaged infrastructures and economies. However, events in 1948, such as the Soviet-sponsored coup in Czechoslovakia and the USSR's blockade of ground access to Berlin, prompted American leaders to adopt a more militaristic stance toward the Soviets. These events led to discussions about forming a joint security agreement with European allies. These discussions concluded on April 4, 1949, when the foreign ministers of 12 countries in North America and Western Europe gathered in Washington, D.C. to sign the North Atlantic Treaty. The treaty was primarily a security pact, with Article 5 stating that a military attack against any of the signatories would be considered an attack against them all. The formation of NATO meant that the USA could place weapons in member states, allowing more effective defense in the event of a Soviet attack. The Berlin Crisis was a major conflict during the Cold War. This crisis was all about the status of Berlin, a city in Germany that was divided among the victorious allies of World War II. In 1948, the Soviet Union tried to cut off Western access to Berlin, leading to a tense situation known as the Berlin Blockade. The United States and the United Kingdom responded by airlifting food and supplies to West Berlin. This was a crucial moment in the Cold War, showing the determination of the Western allies to stand up to Soviet pressure. Fast forward to 1958, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev demanded that the United States and its allies give up their roles in Berlin. He threatened to sign a separate treaty with East Germany if they didn't agree within 6 months. This led to increased tensions and ultimately resulted in the construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961. The Berlin Wall became a powerful symbol of the Cold War, dividing East and West Berlin. It was a physical representation of the ideological divide between the democratic West and the communist East. The Greek Civil War, which took place from 1946 to 1949, was a significant event during the Cold War. This conflict erupted shortly after the end of World War II, with a communist-dominated uprising against the established government of the Kingdom of Greece. Background: the roots of the war lay in the divisions within Greece during World War II between the communist-dominated left-wing resistance organization, EM-ELACE, and loosely allied anti-communist resistance forces. The struggle was the first proxy conflict of the Cold War and represents the first example of post-war involvement on the part of the Allies in the internal affairs of a foreign country. With the support of the United Kingdom and the United States, the Greek government forces ultimately prevailed. The war resulted from a highly polarized struggle between left and right ideologies that started when each side targeted the power vacuum resulting from the end of Axis occupation during World War II. Impact: the Greek Civil War enabled Stalin to probe the limits of Western will, delineated both American and Soviet global outreach, and informed the American policy of nation-building during the Cold War. The Chinese Civil War was a significant event during the Cold War era. It was a conflict between the Kuomintang-led government of the Republic of China and the forces of the Chinese Communist Party. The war started on August 1, 1927, and continued intermittently until December 7, 1949. The result was a communist victory, leading to the establishment of the People's Republic of China on the mainland. The nationalist government retreated to Taiwan. The Chinese Civil War had a profound impact on China and the world. It led to the de facto existence of two Chinas, the People's Republic of China on the mainland and the Republic of China in Taiwan. This situation has been a major factor in the complex relationship between China, Taiwan, and the United States. From an American perspective, Taiwan is one of a small number of issues that has the potential to spark conflict between the United States and China. The future of Taiwan is seen as turning on whether the people of Taiwan can maintain confidence in their future. The Warsaw Pact, formerly known as the Warsaw Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance, was a significant event during the Cold War. It was a mutual defense organization composed originally of the Soviet Union and several other countries. Why was it created? The immediate occasion for the Warsaw Pact was the Paris Agreement among the Western powers, admitting West Germany to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. This move by the West prompted the Soviet Union to create a counterbalance, leading to the formation of the Warsaw Pact. The treaty provided for a unified military command and for the maintenance of Soviet military units on the territories of the other participating states. It was the first step in a more systematic plan to strengthen the Soviet hold over its satellites. Impact: the Warsaw Pact served as a lever to enhance the bargaining position of the Soviet Union in international diplomacy. It was a significant part of the larger power dynamics of the Cold War, representing the Eastern Bloc's response to NATO. The Sino-Soviet split was like a messy divorce between the Soviet Union and China. Imagine the Cold War as a giant chessboard. On one side, you have the United States and its allies. On the other side, you have the Soviet Union and China, two powerful nations united under the banner of communism. But about 60 years ago, that chessboard was suddenly rearranged. These two nations, once close allies, found themselves at odds over who should be the leader of the global communist movement. It was a struggle for power, with both sides refusing to back down. The disagreement flared up at the 1960 Moscow Conference of World Communist Parties. The Chinese, along with the Albanians, criticized the Soviet Union's new program, which they saw as a deviation from true Marxism-Leninism. This led to a series of conflicts, including economic blows and militarization of the border. The split had far-reaching consequences. It complicated the dynamics of the Cold War and set the stage for U.S. President Richard Nixon's historic trip to China in 1972. This was a strategic move designed to counter the USSR. The Hungarian Uprising of 1956 was a significant event during the Cold War. It was a nationwide revolution against the government of the Hungarian People's Republic and its Soviet-imposed policies. The uprising lasted for 12 days, from October 23rd to November 4th, 1956. The revolution began when university students in Budapest called on the public to join them in a protest against the USSR's control over Hungary. The students had a list of 16 demands for political and economic reforms. However, when they tried to broadcast these demands on the radio, they were detained by security guards. This sparked a violent response from the Hungarian people, who formed militias to fight against the State Protection Authority. Despite the bravery of the Hungarian people, the uprising was ultimately crushed by Soviet tanks and troops on November 4, 1956. Thousands of people were killed or wounded, and nearly 250,000 Hungarians fled the country. The U.S. response to the uprising was cautious. The Eisenhower administration wanted to keep the situation in Eastern Europe unstable, without it escalating into a potential nuclear conflict. This policy resulted in a lot of talk, but no action, leaving the Hungarian people to face the Soviet forces on their own. The Hungarian uprising showed the world the deep dissatisfaction with the communist system and the desire for freedom and independence from Soviet control. It remains a symbol of resistance and the fight for freedom. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a major confrontation that brought the United States and the Soviet Union close to war in October 1962. This event is often seen as the most dangerous moment of the Cold War. The crisis began when the Soviet Union, led by Premier Nikita Khrushchev, started shipping nuclear-armed missiles to Cuba. The Soviet Union had promised to defend Cuba with Soviet arms in May 1960. These missiles could hit much of the eastern United States within a few minutes if launched from Cuba. The United States, under President John F. Kennedy, learned about these missile shipments in July 1962. By August 29th, U.S. U-2 spy planes flying over the island reported new military construction and the presence of Soviet technicians. On October 14th, the presence of a ballistic missile on a launching site was reported. After careful consideration, President Kennedy decided to place a naval ears or blockade on Cuba to prevent further Soviet shipments of missiles. This decision helped to de-escalate the situation and eventually led to the Soviet Union agreeing to remove its missiles from Cuba. The Cuban Missile Crisis had a significant impact on the American public. A study by the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago found that the crisis changed public opinion and influenced how the American public views the Cuban Missile Crisis in retrospect. The arms race began in earnest after World War II, when the Soviet Union emerged as a nuclear power in 1949. This sparked a competition with the United States, which had developed and used the atomic bomb during the war. Both nations began to rapidly develop and stockpile nuclear weapons, each trying to outdo the other. But why did they do this? The idea was deterrence. Each side believed that by having a large arsenal of nuclear weapons, they could prevent the other from attacking. This concept was known as mutually assured destruction, MAD. The theory suggested that neither side would start a nuclear war for fear of being destroyed themselves. However, this race wasn't without its consequences. The massive military spending put a strain on both nations' economies and societies. In the United States, for example, there was pressure from the armed forces and arms manufacturers to increase military spending throughout the 1950s. In the end, the arms race lasted until the end of the Cold War in 1990. It was a period of great tension and fear, but also one of technological advancement. The space race began as an extension of the Cold War. Both nations saw the potential of rocket technology not only for military use, but also as a way to prove their technological and ideological superiority. Let's look at some of the key events in this race. The first major milestone was on October 4, 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the world's first artificial satellite. This was followed by the launch of Sputnik 2, which carried a dog named Laika, making it the first mission to send a living organism into space. The United States responded by launching Explorer 1, their first satellite, on February 1, 1958. This satellite led to the discovery of the Van Allen radiation belt. On April 12, 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth, making a 108-minute orbital flight in his Vostok 1 spacecraft. This historic event marked a significant victory for the Soviet Union in the space race against the United States. But there also was Neil Armstrong. He's an American astronaut who was the first person to walk on the moon on July 20, 1969, as part of the Apollo 11 mission. This event became a little victory of the United States in this race. However, these two men, from different nations and backgrounds, played pivotal roles in the space race and have left a lasting legacy in space exploration. Despite the intense competition, the space race led to significant advancements in technology, science, and space exploration. It was a remarkable time in history that showed us the possibilities of human achievement and the wonders of the universe. The Prague Spring was a significant event during the Cold War, taking place in Czechoslovakia in 1968. It was a period of political liberalization and mass protest. The beginning. The Prague Spring began on January 5, 1968, when Alexander Dubček, a reformist, was elected first secretary of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia. Dubček aimed to create socialism with a human face by introducing liberalizing reforms. These reforms included loosening restrictions on media, speech, and travel. The Dubček's reforms were a strong attempt to grant additional rights to the citizens of Czechoslovakia, partially decentralizing the economy and democratizing the country. After national discussions, the decision was made to split the country into two republics, the Czech Socialist Republic and the Slovak Socialist Republic. However, these reforms were not well received by the Soviets. After failed negotiations, the Soviet Union and most Warsaw Pact members invaded Czechoslovakia on August 21, 1968, to suppress the reforms. The New York Times cited reports of 650,000 men equipped with the most modern and sophisticated weapons in the Soviet military catalog. Resistance was mounted throughout the country, involving attempted fraternization, sabotage of street signs, defiance of curfews, etc. Despite the resistance, Czechoslovakia remained a Soviet satellite state until 1989, when the Velvet Revolution peacefully ended the communist regime. From an American perspective, the Prague Spring was seen as a peripheral event due to the domestic upheaval in the United States during 1968. However, it was recognized that the U.S. would not provide material support for the Czech innovators in the event of Soviet intervention.